Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. We are going to talk about a couple conversations that Maria and I had with some other coaches. And we were chatting a little bit before we hopped on to record this. And I think that we're going to coin this episode as the quest for validation. I feel like there's a lot of coaches out there, including ourselves from time to time, that just are really looking for validation in some way, whether it be from ourselves or from outside sources, but just having that feeling of just like pure confidence of like, yes, like I am doing this. This is who I am. My capabilities are where they need to be. All of these different types of things, right? To make us just feel a bit more confident.
Yeah.
So Maria and I are going to unpack a few conversations that we had. Actually, they're conversations from coaches who were in our Facebook group, the New Money Habits Financial Coaches. We just kind of connected with these coaches through there and hopped on the phone with them. They had a few questions that they wanted to run past us. And these are just a few nuggets from those conversations. My conversation I think was probably like a 45-minute conversation. And Maria, I think you said that you spent like 90 minutes.
I did. We really connected and found some common ground and some spots for teaching and learning from each other. So if I've got the time, I love giving it. So, yeah, it was fun. But I will say that the conversation had absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about today. It just so happens that, when we start conversations, we can pull out nuggets in lots of different ways. And it was just something that I saw and heard in what he was saying. And so I think that it goes right in accordance to what you were talking about earlier. And I think we should definitely unpack it.
Yeah. You were being a coach.
I was being a coach. Yeah.
You had a conversation started, it unfolded, and then you saw and heard things and You're like, hey, this is what I'm seeing and hearing.
Yes. And of course I got permission from him first to offer that. But yes, I have a hard time turning that off. I think it's part of who I am. So yeah.
Yep. I feel that. So, I guess I'll start with my conversation first. Is that all right?
Oh, of course.
All right, cool. So I hopped on the phone with a newer and aspiring coach. She's actually like just freshly starting. So much so that she's like getting her first beta clients. She's talking about like getting like a business page set up and like all this kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she had a lot of questions, like how do I do this? How do I do that? Which I was more than happy to help her kind of get stuff off the ground. But there was one moment in our conversation that I just basically told her like, hold on a second, because I see where you're going with this. And I think that if you keep that same mindset and that same kind of like perspective on things, that it's actually not going to work out very well for you. For this conversation, the biggest thing that stood out to me was that like, she just wanted to have everything in the right place, like perfectly.
Okay.
Right? She really wanted to make sure that all of her boxes were checked, that she was like getting everything that she needed to do set up the way that they need to be set up, all that kind of stuff. And the big thing that she kept saying was like, I just want to be, I want to be seen as like a professional. I want to be seen as like someone who knows what they're doing, someone who has things together, like professional,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's when I paused her. I was like, I understand the desire for that because like, you do want to come across as someone who knows what they're doing, right?
Right.
Someone that, you go to a business page on Facebook and you're like, wow, like this is like a legitimate business. Okay, that makes sense. But I told her, I was like, I think that if you're so focused on having the appearance of being a professional, that could actually take away from just like the genuineness and the authenticity of who you are, because think about it. When we have a prospect, a potential client that might be looking for someone to help them with their money, they're not really going to be like looking for like this suit and tie guy or whatever.
Thank goodness, because I can't be that.
Right, or whatever, to step in and be like, hey, like I know what to do with your money, and like nose up and everything like that.
Right.
What they're looking for is someone to connect with.
Yeah.
They're really looking for someone who understands them, someone who's real, someone who has a story. And I told her, I was like, I think that if you were to get the business page set up and do all those things, there's nothing wrong with that. But with your messaging, I really want to encourage you to not just be like this person who's like, I have all the answers, I can solve all your problems. Instead, just communicate that like you're a real person too. And like tell your story, like I'm sure that you've come from a place to where maybe you were struggling with your finances at one place or at one time, and that what it looked like for you during that time. How did it feel? What did it look like for you and your husband? And just share that experience of like where you were and how you got to where you are now, and what you're trying to do for other people now too. So it's really all centered around conversations versus a perception of professionalism.
Yeah.
And I think that if you were to do that, that you're going to have a lot more success. And she was like, yeah, I get that. And we didn't really dive too much into the validation sides of things, but that happened a few weeks ago. And as time passed on, it made me just I was thinking about it, and I was like, I think that that's something that a lot of coaches struggle with. And that's something that I struggled with when I was first starting. Like I wanted to be perceived as this person who wasn't a fraud, but the thing is that you're already validated. You are.
How so?
Because it starts with yourself. Like the sheer desire for you to have a helping heart, to want to help other people in honestly some of the most intimate ways, which is with your finances. Most coaches, now I don't want to say all coaches, but pretty much all of them. Pretty much all of them.
I don't want to say all, but I'm going to say all.
Right. They do have a story. They got themselves into a place to where they think, okay, like if I can do it, then I can help other people do it too. And that alone is validating. And that starts with you, right? And I think that, if you were to just like nurture that and really empower that versus looking for outside sources to empower that it's going to grow, it's going to blossom in its own way in time. But if you were to start the opposite, the outside in, I think that you're really going to struggle on the way in.
Yeah. So a couple of things I heard you say, and I heard you say it in a few different ways. I think you used the word appear, and I don't remember what the other word was, but it was very much it was similar to that. And it was that idea of appearing professional. And I actually made a note about, appearing professional versus just being professional. And when you say that you're looking for that outside validation, I think sometimes that really is more about the appearance, especially in this world of social media and having your entire life just on display for everybody. It's easy to think that whatever you look like on the outside is what's going on behind the scenes. And it's kind of like, the Wizard of Oz, which I don't even know if you're old enough to know the real Wizard of Oz. But it's that.
What's the Wizard of Oz?
Are you messing with me? You really?
Is that what they say? May the force be with you or something?
No, you're not messing with me. You are messing with me.
I am.
Okay, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know you're young, but come on, give me a break. But yeah, like the man behind the curtain. It's just like it's the reality, and that's what he was looking for too, right? He was trying to appear in a way that was not real. And when it all came down to it, all they needed was him to draw out of them what they already had inside of them. And so I think that as we're looking for that validation, or we're wanting to appear professional, just be professional. Now that's going to require us to actually define that word for ourselves. What does professional mean to you? And and I heard you use the word professional and perfection kind of interchangeably. And I know you didn't do that on purpose. It's just, I think sometimes we think that that has to be the case, that professional equals perfection. And that's not true either. So yeah, I just want people to realize, like, let's make sure that the way we're coming across is less important than how we actually are. Because what if you come across as being professional and perfect behind the curtain, in front of the curtain, and then they peel that back and they're like, oh, you're not who you said you were. Well, now you're a fraud. Now you really are a fraud, right? And so you had also said something about not wanting to be a fraud. And I think that's where the conversation with my other coach comes into play here. This individual was talking about how he didn't charge a lot, which is fine. I don't want to go down that path right now about pricing. It was what he said after that statement that I caused me to pause him. And it was because I don't yet know what I'm doing. And I'm like, whoa, time out. The more that, and of course I just went straight to the subconscious mind. Like, the more that you say that, that's what you are hearing, and that's what you start to believe. So what I wanted to do with him was just help him reframe that statement so that he didn't put himself out there fraudulently, that he knows everything and that he's going to be the one who has all of the right answers or all the right tools for somebody. But not that he doesn't know what he's doing, because he does know what he's doing for the person that he needs to help, right? As long as he's at least one or two steps farther than the person who he's trying to help, then he does know what he's doing, and he doesn't have to be 35 steps ahead of that person. So the reframe I helped him with was, I'm still learning. That's it.
That's a good one, because I'll tell you what, I am learning every day.
That's what I told him about myself. And I'm like, and if you've stopped learning, then you're really not growing either. And that's not going to help the people that you're with. And if we come into something thinking that we need to know everything, we're not going to be good coaches.
Right.
What I tell my clients is, I've known you for 2 weeks, 2 hours, 2 months, 2 years. However long I've known them. You've known you your whole life. So for me to think that I'm going to know more about what's good for you than what you know truly is what good for you, that's ridiculous on its face. And so I have to be constantly learning, not just learning what's out there in the world for us to learn about, whether it's coaching, techniques, tools, those things are definitely important. But I also need to be learning about the person I'm helping on a regular basis, because that person is very different than the person I had an hour before that person. And if I try to pick it up and just say, well, everything that I did with person A is going to be the same and work for person B, that's not true, because person A is different than person B. And so I think that that's one of the things that as we're looking for that validation, let's actually be professional. Let's be learners, and then have those clients tell us what they got from that. That's where your validation is going to come from, not from the appearance of what you think that you want people to look, appear to be. It's going to be, how did you actually help them? And it's probably going to be in a way that you didn't even think you were going to help them. It might be something that's actually much, much greater than what you thought you were going to do, but just a little bit different. So, yeah.
I think that with both of these scenarios, what's really I don't want to say lacking, but like there's something there that's missing, right? And to me, it sounds like both individuals, and probably because they're first starting out, right? Like, they're just kind of feeling the water right now, dipping their toes in. They're falling short on a certain level of confidence.
I agree.
And that is something that does come in time. Now, I'm sure that there's someone listening to this right now that's like, yep, that's me, right? Mm-hmm. But I can say that I'm not a confident person. So that's pretty tough for me to do. What I can say is that no one is born confident.
I don't know. My 3-year-old seems really confident.
Right.
And I joke, I half joke, but I am going to push back there a little bit. I think some of us really are born confident. I really do. I think that societal pressures, the way that the parents, the way that we raise kids, I think a lot of that gets tamped down, because we're trying to civilize those children. So I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't parent or anything like that. Please do not misunderstand that statement. But as we civilize people, I do believe that we are kind of saying, you are not yet confident enough to run through that street. You don't understand all of the dangers around you and all that stuff. So I do think that a lot of us are born with that confidence, and then it's kind of stripped from us slowly but surely.
Mm-hmm. Or reinforced, because the reason I said that is I really think that confidence is something that is a learned skill.
Okay.
I really, really believe that, because, you can grow up and maybe not be a very confident person, and even go into your early adulthood and not be very confident. However, there are certain things that you can do to put yourselves into situations that require you to be confident.
Yeah.
Right. And those situations, a lot of people don't do them, because the only way that you become confident is if you go up against something that you're scared of.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And
that's
so,
the only way.
Yep. And I think too that just to add to what I said earlier, I think that we are born with that confidence, but it is a false confidence in a lot of ways, because there is oftentimes not that fear, and not all kids. I mean, I had 4 children, and 3 of them definitely had more of that healthy fear that they were born with. My 4th one though, she was born fearless. So it is a false sense of confidence, because it's she'll just be like, I got this, Mom. And she has no idea what she's talking about. Right. And she is fearless. She would just jump into a pool, not knowing how to swim. There is not any of that, the reality that goes along with it. So I agree with you, Cody, that it has to be honed, and either way, either you're born with a false confidence and it needs to be, rooted in reality, or you're born without that confidence and it needs to be learned.
Yeah. When I was 8 years old, I went out into a lightning storm.
Oh, smart.
And yep. And I was throwing my hands up to the sky, because I thought I was Thor. And I was like, please, hit me with the lightning. Just because. So that's definitely false confidence.
Yeah.
And I learned real quick from my mom that confidence stripped from me pretty quickly. But then I got the reality of confidence later on in life. Right?
Yep.
And the only reason I bring this up is because I think that a lot of the validation is rooted in a lack of confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that the only way to actually go about that is to just do things that either scare you or they make you uncomfortable, because that is the only time that we're able to actually grow.
Yep.
If you think about, if you sit here and you listen to me speak, the only times that you've ever grown in your life is when you've gone through something difficult. It's when you've overcome something, right? You don't grow through easy things. You go through hard things. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that may be struggling with this because they are desperately ready to grow, but they have yet to let go of something. Right? And to me, letting go of just that need for the external validation will then allow you to grow within your internal validation, which then as a byproduct will give you the external validation, but you won't want it at that point. It won't matter to you.
Right. Yeah.
Because all that matters is what's within you.
Yeah. And I always liken this whole process to, a kid who learns how to crawl and then take a couple steps before they learn how to walk, before they learn how to run. And I think so many times as beginning coaches, we want to literally just get out the gates running. And we can't always do that. The way that we learn, the way that we gain that confidence is to crawl first. And that's absolutely okay. And that doesn't mean that you're not helping people. It just means that you're helping people who are closer to where you are right now than further down that spectrum. So, the people who, if you are specifically a numbers person and or budget coach, for example, then help the people who are just needing help figuring out how to tamper down their lifestyle. If you start to get through that and you're like, you know what, there's more to this, and I know I can help these individuals do some more, then you're going to start to walk, take those few steps. And eventually, after you've done it for a long time, you can run, and you're going to be running with clients who are a lot different than the clients that you started crawling with. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's actually necessary. Like, we need people who can crawl with some of the clients, and we need people who can walk and people who can run. And so you just realize that you're going to be one of those coaches along that continuum at some point in your career. You're not always going to be the one who necessarily crawls. Yeah. It's okay not to try to get out of the gate running.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that even like with these two coaches, since they are relatively newer coaches.
Yes.
I think that with them, if they were to take an approach to not only gain new clients, but then also do things like what the gentleman that you spoke with, which is raise your prices, right? I think that if they were to be genuine and just share their values in their own story, that's really going to help attract clients. Now, it sounds counterproductive, but it works. Anyone who's listened to the show for a while knows that I'm a big social media guy. So 99% of what I do is on social media. And I will tell you that consistently, the posts that get the most likes or the most comments or, the most conversions as far as like conversations started, because people will see that post and then message me about it. The ones that do the best are the ones where I tell people that I messed up.
They're the vulnerable ones.
The vulnerable ones. Mm-hmm. Those ones are the ones that do the best. And they like that because they know that they can feel comfortable coming to them who's not comfortable coming to someone who doesn't have this perception of having it all figured out.
Yeah, it's less intimidating for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're embarrassed about something as a client, right? If you've done something that you're embarrassed about or whatever, I mean, you're not really wanting to go to the person who has perfected that system, because you're like, well, I'm all the way over here. I don't feel confident in doing that. As the client, I don't feel confident in talking to you because you seem to have it all together. And so, I mean, I know that is it's a real thing. It's a real feeling. It's like, if you have a lot of weight that you want to lose, it's very intimidating to go to this, perfectly sculpted person because you're like, I want to get there, but I'm not there yet. And are they judging where I am right now? You don't know if they've actually been through the trenches. So even the Greek gods, they need to be able to tell somebody about when they struggled, through something. And eventually they're going to be with the people who have already laid that foundational groundwork. And they're going to be with the ones who are now running, the people who are running in our other analogy. So they're definitely needed. And they can still relate to the people who are in the beginning if they're willing to be vulnerable enough to put that story out there. But there's a place for all of us in that continuum of coaching and confidence and learning and just all of those things. And so I do encourage anybody who's listening today to take a real look at where you are. What are you willing to put out there? Are you willing to be vulnerable in a way that allows people to come in and talk to you? In fact, when I was talking to this individual, I was walking him through some processes that I'm working on in the background. And I had told him that I'm not really great with spreadsheets. And of course, while I'm talking to him and I'm walking him through something, like I totally screw up some sort of formula on the spreadsheet. And I said out loud, I'm like, well, at least that I'm not perfect. I haven't had, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this. And he was just able to chuckle and walk through that. And it didn't matter to him that I wasn't perfect at an Excel, because I never put myself out there as being perfect at that. And that's the other thing too. You guys start putting yourselves out there as, in your case, Cody, with the lady that you're talking to, as this uber professional, you're going to start putting the bar pretty high. And people could be very easily disappointed if they come behind that curtain and they peek behind there, they're like, oh, you're just you. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with just you. But if you've told them you're someone else, they're going to be disappointed. Yeah. So don't set them up for that.
Yeah. And going back to what you said about the crawling versus walking versus running, if you're listening to this and you hear what Maria says there, and you're identifying with being a person who's in the crawling phase, that's okay. That's where everybody starts. That's where we started when we first started coaching. We were definitely crawlers.
If I'm honest, I constantly go back to crawling. I mean, I'll have something where I'm like, oh, I've got this. I'm running with this now. And then I run into a damn wall is what happens. Like I bump into a wall and I hurt myself so badly that I have to go back and crawl before I can then learn to walk and then run again. Because there are so many nuances, you guys, so many different things that we can learn. If, like we said earlier, if you're a constant learner, you will also learn how to crawl often. It's not like this thing where you just arrive. You will get hurt, you're going to get knocked down, and you're going to have to go through a little bit of physical therapy, if you will, to learn how to walk and run again.
And the best part about it too is if you have a community of coaches that you're learning from and getting support through, kind of like our group, as you kind of move through, the maturity of your business, as you grow your business, and as you're going into those walking phases or even those running phases, there's two things I want everybody to understand. Is that one is that, just like Maria said, is that just because you're running at one point does not necessarily mean that you're going to be running all the time. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's different areas of your coaching business too.
Yep.
I feel that 2,000% in my heart. But the other side of it too is that maybe you are walking or running in a certain area. Well, then you have the opportunity to help other coaches who may be crawling in that area.
Yep.
To work through that process. And no, you probably won't be getting any sort of financial compensation for that. We're all just here to help each other. But what you are doing is you're casting your net of influence and legacy, because even though you may not be working with their clients directly, that coach is going to learn something from you and then help other people with it. So if you think about it that way, you're able to multiply and amplify your impact in a huge, huge way, simply just because you understand, hey, everybody's at a different place, and that is totally okay. And I know that I'm going to be at that crawling place again once I learn something new.
Yeah, I love that. It's a whole pay it forward conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A huge reason why we do this podcast. We don't get paid for this.
We don't?
But I don't. I don't know about
Darn
you.
it. No, I don't either. Don't worry. I'm not holding back on you, Cody.
No, we're not running any ads. This is all free, and,
yeah.
And it's okay, we're taking time out of our busy schedules to do this because we just know that, there is that impact net that is important to us. And if we can be those people for a certain amount of coaches, then awesome. Because then it allows those coaches to potentially do the same thing for other coaches too, which then just creates this big, big net of all of these people who are going to be improving their lives. And that's why we're in this.
Yeah. It's a ripple effect. We're just throwing rocks into the pond and we're watching it ripple.
That's right.
It's fantastic. This has been a really great conversation, Cody. I'm really glad that you brought it up for us today. And for those of you listening, just realize once again that these conversations happened with people who are in the group. And so, like I said earlier, if I've got the time, I love to give that time. So if you guys want to pick our brains, have a conversation with us or with any of the other amazing coaches who are in that group, just ask. We don't have infinite amount of time to talk to every single person, but we'll make sure that if there's something specific that you have a question about, we'll either be able to answer that ourselves with you, or we can answer it here on the podcast, or we can put you in touch with someone who's in the group who will know what it is that you need to know. So don't hesitate to ask. That's all we're asking from you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So get plugged into that group if you're not. It's growing actually at a pretty good rate, which is pretty awesome to see. I remember when it had like 10 people in it. And it's cool to see where it's at now, and it's exciting to see where it's going to be too.
Yeah.
So definitely hop into that group. And of course, we also would love it if you could leave a review on the show as well, or a rating, whatever. I'm not sure which one it is. Review or rating.
They're both. They're separate things. Yeah. Rating is it's a real quick, touch of the thumb. You can do 4 or 5 star rating. I mean, you can do any star you want, but we're asking for. But if you do
grow the podcast, helps people understand, what you actually feel about it. It helps us too. Yeah. It gives us feedback. So
so if you have a couple minutes, a review would actually be awesome because it's going to do all those things that Cody just said. A rating is great, but it only lets us know what you think about it. It doesn't let us know why. So if you leave a star rating and then also a review with it, we'll know why it is you rated us the way you did. So we appreciate that feedback for sure.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are going to be wrapping this up for today, but as always, we'll be back next week, and we hope that you guys have a fun and prosperous week ahead.
Thanks, good. Guys. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our host by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.